for having me. I can't take credit for what's been done. That's been done by locals, but the inspiration, I'll take it. So my story, if you haven't heard before about this, is I worked in transportation planning and mostly in the engineering world for a long time, and helped write a national manual on walkability. And here's me talking about walkability to an engineer, and he's like, it's kind of like us right now for lunch. Taking a little snooze, And this is kind of the process we used, right? A decade ago, we talked about stuff a lot. We made big, long plans, and the planner's always like, just wait. In 30 years, it's going to be great. Right? The 2035 plan, which is now, the 2045 plan. And I was working in the South a lot during this time. So Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, talking about walkable communities and doing renderings. And it seems like these renderings, I found when they went through the public process, they got a little bit watered down. They kind of got half done, right? Oh, we were just almost there, and we didn't go all the way. And so the process of urban planning and street design was kind of wearing on me. I'd been to Europe and seen a lot of those communities there, and how they're really sharing the street, all ages, using places, adapting what they had to the new norms of what the community wanted. And you bring these ideas back, to Texas, and I'd start presenting these in a public meeting. This guy was there. Carmageddon, you're taking my cars away. And the whole crowd would start kind of getting into that. And after about 200 of these, like the ulcers in my stomach, I couldn't ignore anymore. It was like, this is a painful way to do it. And it wasn't that it was wrong. Dallas during this era, the South, still today, very much a car culture, right? It gets hot. It gets cold here, right? That snow stuff that doesn't ever go away. So it wasn't that this, the Carmageddon guy was wrong. It was just that everybody has to deal with some sort of weather element, right? And so we were using this as our crutch to not do anything in our communities and just stay status quo. And of course, all the paperwork, right, to change things in that community is a real stalemate. So this is where the Better Block really initiated from, was this idea of, let's get out there and let's start doing it together. Let's break down these fears of changing our city, bit by bit, block by block. And so most of our work over the last 9 years has been in Main Street communities. A lot of places that are around the edge of the downtown, where neighborhoods trying to revitalize. This one's in Akron, Ohio, just an example there. We're still urban planners, so we look at what's missing and we ask the community what's missing in this area. And we still draw pictures, right? I still want to plan and design what we're putting out there, but we don't stop at that level. We actually go out and do it, right? Temporarily for a day. And now these are getting even longer. You follow the tactical urbanism, DIY urbanism, Better Block, whatever we're calling it today, movement. This one, that green is actually finger paint, so that stuff you used in kindergarten can now be used again to build your bike lanes in your city, temporarily. And so I've been fortunate to do this project all across the United States with multiple different partners, and over the last 9 years have made a lot of mistakes, screwed up a few times, painted stuff when we shouldn't have, had the police ask us what we're doing. I haven't yet gotten this, but there's always a So we've learned a lot over this period, and I think I want to catch you up a little bit on what's happening in this movement. And I've been told this is a crowd that's already gone through a lot of the the progress of doing some of these projects. So I'm going to give you some tricks on 5 kind of ways that projects get held up too, that some of these demonstrations don't happen. So we usually work quick. That's one of the things that we found really helps. If you take too long doing a project, you're going to talk your way out of it. If you're like planning out for a year to do something, you're going to find all these excuses of why you can't help, and you'll wear out your volunteer base. So we usually work in about 9 days to do one of these, once we've identified a location that's prime for a better water. And our first rule is give it a name. Even in small towns, we've seen, you might call this downtown Lewiston, but like, what's this corner called? What's this block called? Giving a name gives people an association with it and provides an identity for it. Set a date. So don't wait too long. Put it on the paper. You're going to do something, even if you don't know what you're doing. Yeah, sorry. That date is like putting the party out there, right? Like, we've got to do it right now. And then making it public. And this has been the real secret sauce of putting it out there, having some vulnerability, saying, we want to make this place better. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. But what happens when that occurs is that you have people coming out of the woodwork to help. They see that vulnerability, they see that opportunity, and they want to be part of it. So, when you're starting out on one of these projects, there's kind of 2 different paths that you can take, depending on where your community is, in terms of relationships with your city staff, with your DOT, with your property owners, with the stakeholders, basically, that you have. So, the first one, and this is how we kind of started Better Block back in the day, is that it was a grassroots approach. And we basically did it without much permission. We used the special event permit process, which is a great American thing. Like, try going to the Ukraine right now and doing one of these, which we did have a group do one in Iran. They didn't wind up in jail, but But we have the ability to gather in America, assemble, right? So we have an assembly permit in every city that we use. It's what you use for a parade, but you just don't close the street, right? And so that's one way to go about it, is like, you're just demonstrating, right? You're gonna go out and do it. You don't have a lot of partnerships with your city yet. You may not have backing by your constituents yet. It's just a small group that wants to go out and do something. The way we've been doing most of them now is partnership approach. So this is cities have already seen, oh, that worked we saw that in Somerville, Massachusetts, and we want to do something like that here. And so they're actually a partner with you, and they facilitate a process for you to do this. They actually maybe even participated in it at the city, or they participated at from a local stakeholder standpoint. So, kind of the tricks in doing that is the grassroots approach. You still want to get that special event permit, but you want to keep it really simple when you're filling this out. The biggest hurdle I've seen communities come across is, anybody? The traffic engineer? Oh, when you start playing with the right-of-way, it becomes an issue a lot of times, right? Anyone experience that? No, it's no problem. What I understand liability in tort law is that a lot of this is because they don't want to take on the liability of these temporary changes happening, right, and then something happening, even during a special event permit. So, I started talking to some engineers about this before, and I said, well, what actually makes you liable in doing this? He says, well, anything that comes across my desk and I approve, I take on some personal responsibility for it. And so we actually called up the Association of Traffic Engineers, I can't remember the name of that now, someone knows it. And I said, has there been a legal case of something like this happening? Of a professional engineer losing his license and being personally held liable for an accident that occurred during a special event? No. So he said, okay, well then you need to tell me the bare minimum so that I don't have to take liability for anything that's beyond what's in the special event permit. So most special event permits will ask you for a traffic plan. They want to know where you're going to put the cones, right? Where you're going to close parts of the street. So that's what you give them. Just tell them where the traffic cones are. So in this one in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, it's we're closing the outside lane, the lane that's next to the curb, right? And it's for staging of the event. Great. Approved. That's what we're doing. So they don't want to know in some cases exactly what you're doing, because that will make them liable in their mind. And so that is a real extreme version of this. Most engineers will work with you to find some temporary solutions now. This was years ago. I think the movement's come a long way since then. But it is possible to follow the rule of the book of the special event permit and just tell them where you're closing the lane and not what's going in there. We build a cycle track and some parklets and stuff like that in this version. So what is the best thing you can get from a project like that? It's really one of your first ones that you're kind of making some inroads with the city, you're introducing the idea of these temporary projects. I think the best thing that comes out of it is the advocates that are spawned from a project like that. Because you get together and you build this all together. And so we're in Pittsfield, Massachusetts again, and this adage really came into play. Meet Kate. Kate's from Pittsfield. She was actually here yesterday. If anybody met Kate. We were working in her neighborhood, and we had a Facebook page, and we were telling her about, we have a better block, we're looking for ideas, who wants to do something. And she said, I saw this. Is it too late to submit? I'd like to try this. And I think this was in Portugal, the Umbrella Alley. And she said, I really want this in Pittsfield. And so we practice improv in Better Block. So how do you do improv? You say yes, and we're going to help you, right? We'll help you design it, build it, bring it to life. So we helped Kate find a location in the Better Block. We found this little alley, had nothing in it, right? No love in this alley. And we said, Kate, let's do it. And I got her best side here. She went around and got a bunch of umbrellas donated. She got a company in town to give some cash for it. Mass Development, the Massachusetts Development Authority, gave her some cash as well to buy some umbrellas. We got a lift. Here's Kate and I up there raising it. Everybody had their hands on it, pushing it up, And we got this umbrella outlet up as part of the project in a couple of days. And lo and behold, it was the front page of the Berkshire Eagle, talking about making Tyler Street better there in Pittsfield. And with Kate, as the champion of this. And what we saw is Kate became the expert in placemaking and umbrella alleys, specifically in Pittsfield. We told Kate, we said, you know what? Your talent is worth something. Your expertise in this is worth something. Charge for it. And she did. And she charged the Downtown Association to do one downtown. And now she's been looked on as an advocate for placemaking and this gathering. She's taken on multiple roles in her neighborhood. Every time I see her on Facebook, she's at City Hall getting something done, And I think what happened was that she found a new way to communicate with her city. It didn't have to be through pointing the finger and saying, fix this, city. It came from, I can be part of this change. And so, taking the advocates that you already have in your town and giving them a different way to communicate with the city in a positive manner in which they can help move it forward. One of Kate's dreams was to have an after-school program in the area, and so she started working with Goodwill that was right on the block, and they had a vacant building, and she said, well, what if we made that into the after-school program? You see Kate's message here that this idea started here in the Better Block, and I said, yes, and is our motto. Thanks, Kate, for stepping up. So that's the kind of advocacy, that's the kind of stuff you want to see out of these projects happen. Tomorrow, your bike lanes may not get built after Better Block. But if you've made advocates that are going to City Hall, that are asking for this kind of things, they're actually changing their lifestyle, changing the way that they live in their city, that's a really good start, I think, to getting to where you want to go. And they actually even started doing some street changes after this one too. Kate kept hounding Public Works and saying, we need some of this out there, and so they've been demonstrating on the street as well. So that's the approach, I think, from the grassroots. That's what we've been seeing happen in cities. It's sort of this building advocacy, building a new way to communicate. Now, what's really fun right now is these partnership approaches. Big partnership that we have is with AARP. AARP, yay! So they have the Livable Communities program. We've done I think about 10 projects now with them, where they're on call for doing some reaching out to their community, reaching out to communities and finding out where they are and where they want to move forward. And one of our big things is when we're going into a city, we ask, is this going to be a partnership, or do we have to go this other route, where we're actually going to kind of embarrass you a little bit, because we're going to do this one way or the other. And most of the time, you don't want to make ARP members mad at you. They vote, right? So most of the time, the cities come along and they're like, yeah, we want to be part of this. And so that process, we still a lot of times use the special event permit, but it's usually a little greased wheel when you're working with the city in this way, because the special event permit doesn't fit exactly what is happening on these projects. And I think Michael Light is here. He's done a couple of these now, tactical urbanism, event permits in cities. And so we're starting to see cities now adopt this as a process in their city. And starting a couple of years ago, I started seeing the RFPs for cities working. And so it's really great to see that this is becoming a common sense approach to it. And so in the partnership approach, a great example, not too far from you all, is Bethel, Vermont. It's a town of a couple thousand damaged during Hurricane Irene, if you recall. And we were asked to go there with AARP Vermont, and we had a community walk. We asked what's missing, and it was pretty easy for them to say, like people like to drive faster in the middle of our town. They don't stop and meet the great people that are there. And so we designed a project around that, and they started building out their downtown temporarily of what they learned in the future. And I think a lot of this is what you've seen maybe in some of your own towns is, some storefronts vacant, some streets that are pretty dominated by the vehicle, no green space, sidewalk dining not there. And over a weekend they went and transformed that into a place that had shops that were alive and streets that had places for everybody on it, and trying out new businesses in the location. And the idea was to do it all with resources from Bethel. So this town was already in town, and they had started a thing called Bethel University, which in March, I'm sure it's the same up here in Vermont, it's like muddy and gloomy a little bit. They're like, why don't we get together the month of March and just hold school for each other and teach each other everything from basket weaving to beer making to urban planning. And so they used that foundation of that structure within the community of communicating with each other and helping each other. And after Hurricane Irene, that bond had formed, and they put it into their town. And they said, this is how we can use our community to help this place. And they still kind of got one foot in the old economy there. They're trying to become a place that's a destination, but they also have logging trucks going through there. So how do you do both and make it work? And what they found was they just wanted to divide up the space a little bit more. So they created, this was 5 years ago now, I think we called it a blue lane back then. Now we color them all different colors. It's basically a slow lane that anything can go down. This guy's biking down on a trike, an AARP member. But we had people we're trying to find a horse, but I think all we got was this unicorn going down the street. But it was basically an idea of, it's not a fast bike lane, it's a place that anybody on any kind of non-motorized can get through. And we had a couple folks on the little scooters, the little hover around kind of scooter go on it too. So they did a parklet, they put a taco stand on it. I was like, there's no way there's gonna be good tacos in Vermont. And it was really good. It was great. This guy, he was like the sous chef at Applebee's. And he's like, I'm gonna start my own business. And they've been doing it in Bethel. I mean, they took some buildings that had no love. They had been boarded up and used for storage. And they turned them into the shops they wanted, a yarn shop, a bakery. And the cool thing is they've been analyzing what's been happening now 2 years after the Better Block. So you have this project where you're like, oh, we're in love with this place, you know? And then they've been slowly, the community, have been slowly filling in those things that they wanted. And so it's cool to go back and look. When we first got to Bethel, there were all this vacancy and unused space. And now we go back and look and see what's revenue generating and what's active now. And they have just taken the Better Block as a benchmark for them to get back to someday. They keep bringing it back up as that. And we were fortunate enough to go back with support of AARP and make some of this permanent. So they had those bulb outs, where you kind of narrow the street down. And we've done them with chalk. So we went back and we used these like Lego rubber pieces. We imported them from the UK because it's like nobody in America wants them. But they're like little Lego pieces, and you can make your street, you can widen the curb lane out with these. And so they've been slowly just putting things in. They put in a co-working space. And I'm like, guys, I don't know if it's going to work out. Like, there's like 5,000 people in this town, and the co-working was filled in like a month. And now it's become this other place where they educate folks out of. And so I really took from that, first of all, that every place has the talent and resources to make itself better. It just needs a little invitation. So it's after lunch. We're gonna do a little something here. We're gonna take something out of the church records here. You turn to your neighbor. You're gonna introduce yourself, and you're gonna tell them which one of your city, what is your city one that's gonna have to take the grassroots initiative, or is it gonna do the partnership to get something like this done? So let's do about 5 minutes of that. Turn to your neighbor, say hi, get really loud in here. Doesn't take much to get Mainers to talk. I like this. Texans are like this too. We just start talking, we're never going to stop. All right. Do you have to become more food for you to stop talking? We need a Huckleberry pie. All right. Let's hear from what our other neighbors have to say. Can you wrap up your conversation real quick? Okay. I'm going to pick on a couple of people. What were y'all talking about back here?
My neighbor told me that he lives in South Portland and moved there from Portland. And I told him that I lived in a tiny town in the mid-coast with just a couple thousand people.
Have y'all ever thought about doing something like this? Going out and paint your own bike lane?
Maybe down the road we have to put hard. It depends on what the people in town need.
That is a great answer. What do people in town need? I think that was one of the biggest breaths of fresh air I had working with the AARP folks, is that they didn't come in first with a philosophy of what a community needed. They didn't come in and say, you need new urbanism, you need complete streets, you need this, you need that. It was, what is needed here? And then you take that idea and you apply design principles to it, you apply best practices to it, and you build the box basically for a community to work in to get there. And so that's been really invigorating for us to work with these communities from that standpoint of going in. Used to when I worked a lot with municipalities, we'd come in with, you got to increase tax base first, justify this project. We all know that great places are going to be vibrant. They're going to have tax base. They're going to get to those things. But we need to respect what is there already. What else? What else?
We're talking about sort of ugly fake materials instead of using natural materials that are abundant to our area. Instead of using those and repurposing those, instead we're using more manufactured materials for structural problems in our city.
I think that's the next step in this stuff. If you're doing any kind of tactical projects right now, you're basically hot wiring materials from highways to do. And it's ugly as shit. That's the biggest complaint we have, is that people are saying, this looks like a construction project. So one of the big mistakes I made in Bethel, we were trying to find a way to do bulb outs. And we couldn't find a material, and they were like, we have all these sawmills that have cut pieces, and I was like, no, it's not gonna. Damn it, it would have worked, So you need to look around, and this is the way that communities are also creating jobs, right? You're using locals. I just heard the story from New Brunswick. Have you heard this? This guy was going out and chipping the ice off of icebergs and selling it to the bars, and they were making some sort of rum drink that they have in New Brunswick. And he made this whole industry out of this. They're actually now using the icebergs to distill their own spirits there. And so we got to get strapping with this stuff, And I think the same thing's going to happen in building materials too. Let's do one more. Oh man.
Okay, so I went across the aisle, quite literally, and talked to the public works person from Bath, Maine. And I'm going to tell him what I heard, and he can tell me whether I heard it right. So I came over and I said, hi, I do, what do you think? And he says, I think this looks like vigilantism. We got a process for this. And I said, okay, well, so in your town, it turns out, they have a committee of people who are looking to do this kind of thing. He's not opposed to doing it, but he thinks that they ought to do it the way they ought to do it. So I said, okay, so you have a process. And that's great. And in that, you can do that. But in Memphis, those people couldn't get the city hall to talk to them. So they remember that project. They went out there and painted the streets themselves. So there's 2 ways to do it. And in Bath, they have a process. And I'm so proud of them.
Well, you know, I tell you, I wish there was a utopian city somewhere that we could go and use as a lab to test this stuff out. But there's not. And every community is a little different. Everyone's going to react to it differently. So cities are a good laboratory right now, towns. And we found some of our best success in smaller towns where, well, you know, the structure's a little bit more, you know, straightforward. There's not as much bureaucracy that happens. So a lot of these communities I'm showing you are second cities or even smaller cities because they're really having to try to do this stuff. And that like that. Old Orchard Beach. Anybody know Old Orchard Beach? Is this kind of the image that comes in your head when you think of Old Orchard Beach? Yeah. This is a kind of a tourist spot south of Portland, if you're not from the area. It's at the moment starting to fill up with Canadians coming down. Some of them not wearing enough clothing. Whatever. So we visited this one with ARB Maine and said, you know, what's missing in this area? And we looked out throughout the entire city and we said, where's a place that we could identify? And we kept hearing from folks was, you know, this city caters a lot to tourism. We would like to have a place that caters to us, to the people who pay taxes here, who live here, that love this place. And so we identified a location where we thought we could get a foot in the ground. And this is it. This is yesterday. We still got the paint on our fingernails, right? From this. They started taking back a part of the town that used to have a center of it. It used to be a little bustling neighborhood. And they're seeing some people move back into it. And so they really wanted to go bright. I think these colors were inspired by our local partner there and her shower curtain, as I learned. Okay. And so what we found is they were wanting to emphasize on the local part of it. So finding out what that community wanted and identifying with it. Lobsters, of course. You know, and the cool part was seeing you're doing these projects out in the open, of having people run by and stop and say, we love what you're doing. How do we get more involved with it? So I've got some stuff for you. The 5 things that might bring your project down. I'm going to have to give it to you later, though. We're going to give you a link so you can go back and look at the 5 things that might stop you in your town from doing it. Thanks for letting me share some time with you and get some questions going out there. And I'll hang around for a few minutes if anyone wants to chat after. Thank you.
Blue Lane in Bethel, one way or two way?
So what?
The Blue Lane in Bethel, is that one way or two way?
It's a sidewalk actually here, so.
So you can get back and forth?
It's just a sidewalk. It was they didn't have a curb lane there, so it was kind of like unmarked, which I kind of like, not having a curb. It gives you a lot of flexibility, but the traffic on it was so slow. We had people biking and skating and riding on the street, so it really just needed a little color pop to it to make it work. Y'all ready to go do one of these?
I was curious, did you know that Kate, who you featured in your slides, was born in Boston?
No way! Good people are listening. That's awesome. Well, again, thanks for the questions, and we'll make sure and get the 5 things that might stop the project going up there. And let's skip to the last one. And if you want to find out some more of the projects that have happened in the area, or have been to Massachusetts, you can look us up and look for the AARP local communities programs that are coming up as well. They have a handbook out there that has a lot of these projects in it, so you can take them back and show them to folks at home and see if it spurs something in your own city. Thanks for having me.